name's Dave Dinkle, and today I'm here with Michael Bloom, who's from one of the local closing agents that we use, and we've probably given you a couple hundred deals over the past 2 years or so.
Absolutely. We've been working together for about 2.5 years now, and we've closed numerous deals for your mentor students.
And one of the reasons I had him come in and talk to us a little bit is I wanted to give the audience kind of a perspective on wholesaling, because you're extremely investor friendly, and you look at an awful lot of wholesale deals, 100 a month possibly?
Possibly. About 40% of the transactions we close are wholesale flip transactions, so we're very well versed in the investor community.
So on those wholesale transactions you see, what is, I'm going to say, a typical, there's probably extremes in every case, but what might be, some wholesalers, here's the point I'm getting at, some wholesalers look to make a few $1,000s. They're very happy with it. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, what we do in the mentoring program is we want to make serious money. You can't make a living making a few $1,000s on a deal. But there are groups of investors that do that, and you have some of those in your system.
Absolutely. We close deals for the full gambit of investors, from the investors that make anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 all the way up to your students who do very well, making $10,000 to $15,000 per deal.
Yeah. Now, what's, out of curiosity, what's the largest A to B and B to C profit that you've seen done?
The largest same-day transaction that I've seen done is about $140,000 profit. It was 8 duplexes that were flipped on a same-day transaction.
Okay. What was the purchase price approximately?
I believe the purchase price was in the $650,000 range, and the sales price was in the $850,000 range.
Okay, great. And of course, the smallest profit is virtually nothing.
I've seen people lose money on deals. It does happen.
You should know that before you get to the 10. Let's talk about the complexity of deals. One of the things that's changed over the past few years has been you just don't go to closing, close, walk away with a check anymore. To get to closing, you have to go through all kinds of hoops and jumps.
Absolutely. Closing these wholesale transactions over the past couple of years has become very difficult because of all the distressed property situations. However, what we do pride ourselves on is being able to navigate the waters for our clients. So basically, if you bring me an A to B, B to C contract, we handle all of the legwork, so you're able to rest a little bit assured.
And you are not only very familiar with, but you actually supply transactional funding in certain circumstances. And those circumstances basically are if you're going to get both sides of the transaction, then you'll do transactional funding.
Absolutely. We do provide transactional funding statewide. We do have a program offering it free up to $80,000. All we need is both sides of the transaction, and we will provide it at no charge for you.
So you can actually do transactions anywhere in the state. Mm-hmm. And you do those on a same-day basis, A to B and B to C?
Absolutely. We have a nationwide network of closers that work with us. We insure property anywhere in the state of Florida, and we will provide transactional funding free of charge anywhere in the state of Florida.
What are some of the quirky things that you've seen that your title underwriters wouldn't insure?
There's a lot of things out there. People do some crazy things with properties here, especially in South Florida. Some of the crazy things that we've seen do, people have done notes and mortgages to themselves on their properties. There have been random things filed against certain properties. I've seen notice of interest written on what look to be napkins. People writing their own quitclaim deeds fully by hand that aren't acceptable. There's a lot of items that can cloud title here in South Florida that you really don't see anywhere else in the country.
Now, in some cases, if there's a judgment on somebody that appears to be the owner of the property, but it's not actually him, he denies it, that's not a judgment against me, and you don't have Social Security numbers like in the good old days, can he sign an affidavit that it's not him? Is that good?
Absolutely. Non-ID affidavits are very commonplace here in South Florida. Obviously, when you get into big metropolitan areas and everyone has common names, non-ID affidavits are standard practice in the industry.
What's the biggest problem that you see that causes deals not to close?
The biggest thing that I see is really title defects. Right now, a major component of the market is short sales, and people in distressed situations obviously can't always pay their bills. So large judgments, federal tax liens, those are a big killer of deals in this market.
Okay, let's talk about the federal tax liens for a minute. That's not a deal killer, but it has to be worked out with the IRS.
Absolutely. The IRS is actually very friendly when it comes to reducing federal tax liens, releasing federal tax liens. They are not trying to actually hold up the sale of the property. They just want to make sure that they are receiving as much for their tax lien as possible. But they are very workable as far as removing the tax lien from title.
And generally, they will not allow the seller to receive any money from the sale unless they get money.
Correct. For the most part, the seller receives no money from the transaction if the IRS is taking a loss on their federal tax lien.
Okay. What other kinds of things have you seen that if you were talking to newer investors, you would say beware of these? One of which I want you to mention is quitclaim deeds in title, the chain of title.
Absolutely. I would say the largest factor in this market is really city issues such as code violations, building violations, open or expired permits. A lot of the properties in this market right now are REOs or heading to be REOs, and a large portion of those, the seller is going to have the buyer close with their title company. Obviously, all of those items that I just mentioned are not part of the title commitment and the title search, and therefore the bank does their very best to make those not a component of title to the closing. I don't agree with that. If there's code violations and stuff like that, it should provide that the title is unmarketable, but a lot of the larger banks and title companies are taking a stance that that is still clear title.
Even though it's only insurable, it's not clear.
Even though it's only insurable.
Yeah, which is a shame, but that's what's happening to a lot of investors. They're buying clouded title properties thinking every time I go to closing I get a clear and marketable title. Sometimes the actual real estate listing agents will say that to you, and it's not at all true. They rehab the property and then they go to get a loan on it, and lo and behold, the same bank probably that foreclosed on it comes back and says, oh no, you don't have clear title, we won't lend on it.
Or code violations in the thousands of dollars, building violations, roof permits. These are, things that could end up costing investors a lot of money and getting them stuck in the middle of a deal that they can't sell to their end buyer, and their deposit is hard on the front end.
Now, who does the actual negotiations on these? Let's say there's a lien, a code violation on the property for $100,000. Who does that negotiation with the city or county?
It all depends on who does the negotiation. Some people that have their own team decide to handle the negotiation in-house. Some people do have outside representation, such as a seller having an attorney. In that sort of situation, they would do the negotiation. We have handled some small-time negotiations as far as small judgments and stuff like that, but most of the time it is someone other than independent title to go ahead and handle those.
And what we do is, one of the focuses we have is to have the students learn to do them themselves, because they're saying to the city or county, I want to buy this property, I want to fix it up so it's livable. They don't say they're living in it. I want to fix it up so it's livable, and what do I have to do to make the lien disappear if I can? Typically you can't, but in some cases they've disappeared, but in most cases they're, I'm going to say 5 or 10% of the lien value.
Yeah, absolutely. Each municipality has different guidelines and different policies with regards to what they will reduce as far as liens and violations go. Also, certain cities and municipalities run amnesty programs to get people into compliance that wouldn't normally be in compliance. So you need to keep an eye out, make sure you're touching base with the city code departments to see if they're running any amnesty programs that your property would be able to squeeze into, because those are really where you're going to get the largest reductions from.
Yeah, those have been real huge money makers for students, because when we find out an amnesty program is going to go into effect or taking effect, we specifically search out large code and lien violation properties that otherwise wouldn't have sold, because most of those are like for $1,500 or $2,000.
And the seller does not know that these programs are in place. A lot of times the realtors won't know that these programs are in place. So there is the possibility and the opportunity to make a much larger spread by joining these amnesty programs for liens and violations.
Yeah, they're a wonderful source of money. They really are great. Any other things you want to bring up about, let's say that the person watching this video hasn't been in the real estate investment business for a long time, or he has been, because we learn something new every day. We've been in the business 38 years, and something new happens all the time. It does to you too. It has to.
Absolutely. I think the biggest thing that I want investors to know out there is once you have an executed contract, you really do have control of the property. I get a lot of mentor students that are nervous when the seller calls them yelling. They're a day or two past the closing date on the contract, and we still don't have a lien search. The seller's saying that they're going to take the deal. in reality, that's not the case. That's not how contracts really work. That's not how doing real estate really works. And by simply getting a grasp on how these situations play out in real life and how the legally works with regards to the contracts and with regards to what's recorded in the public record and how title insurance actually works, it does gain you a significant amount of leverage through the closing process and even going back for price reductions and things like that.
Yeah, one of the things, while you brought it up just now without having said it, for years, if we have a seller come to us and say, I'm not closing, you've taken too long, whatever the thing is, as long as we're not in violation of the terms of the contract, I've proposed to people that instead of going to court and doing a breach of contract, which can take months or years, property's been sold, the seller's moved on, you actually file a lis penens and start a foreclosure proceeding with just your contract. Now, you just had one of those, that this really gums up the title.
Absolutely. I just had a situation where a end buyer backed out of a transaction. They were very nervous about the code violations that existed on the property, and their attorneys thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and file lis pendens in order to basically stop the closing of the property while they investigated the code violations. Obviously, we moved forward with the transaction. The buyer was comfortable with our position with the previous buyer and accepted the lis pendens as a exception to the title policy. But it is a very effective way of putting a stop to a real estate deal and figuring out what your next plan of action is.
So in that case, that buyer now has a problem. He has a lis pendens against his property, which has to be released.
Correct. He does have a lis pendens against the property. We are currently holding a deposit that lis pendens was regarding, and we do feel comfortable that we will eventually get a release for it, and the buyer felt comfortable that we would eventually get a release for it.
Okay. Anything else?
That's really it. You wanted to discuss quit claims in the chain of title. That is something that we see a lot here in South Florida as well. When you're dealing with low-income properties, distressed properties, a lot of people look at it as you don't need a title agent. You simply sign a deed and transfer the property to a brother, a cousin, a family member, so on and so forth. And what a lot of people don't realize is that there's very exact language that needs to be placed on these deeds. If the person is living in the property, it needs the homestead language on the deed. If it's not on there, it's not a valid deed. And anywhere in the chain of title, that can be an issue for you.
Yeah, and that becomes a real issue down the road. Now, you deal with our mentor students daily, literally.
Absolutely.
What's your take on our mentoring program versus some of the other ones that you've seen around?
They're really out there getting deals done. To be honest, the Fearless program has really expanded people's horizons on real estate investing. It's made a lot of people a lot more comfortable, and in being more comfortable, they're out there getting a lot more deals under contract, and in turn getting deals sold.
Now, you've actually started using our automated offering system.
Absolutely. I've been a wholesaler myself for almost 2 years. I started off by simply, handwriting my contracts and blasting them out, but being introduced to the REIFAX system, it's really the most efficient way that you can get the maximum amount of contracts out. It is very simple, and like you say all the time, the money's in the follow-up.
Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for watching, and thanks.
Thank you.